Hi there, welcome to Conversations, where we seek to advance your leader and team excellence by discussing relevant topics that impact today's organizations. Welcome to the show. Hey there, leaders. Today's show, we will be having a conversation around rebuilding businesses using a shared approach to visioning with our guest, Mr. Thomas Anderson II. So let's learn a little bit about Thomas before we bring him out. Thomas is CEO and facilitator of Tayano Leadership Solutions. He has over 20 years experience leading high-performance teams in faith-based organizations, 12 years experience in leadership coaching and workshop facilitation, and 10 years experience as a support staff member in secondary education. He is a reoccurring presenter at Regent University's annual research roundtables and has published scholarly articles in the Journal of Practical Consulting. These articles are on coaching, organizational change, well-being, and employee engagement. Thomas has generated high-performance results at a team level using volunteer and employee engagement techniques, strengths-based follower development strategies, and professional coaching competencies. Above all, Thomas enjoys being a devoted husband to wife Jamie and dedicated father to Ariana and Azalea. Thomas leads with, for all you Clifton Strengths enthusiasts, Thomas leads with relator, intellection, individualization, futuristic, and deliberative. Thomas, welcome to the show. Hey there, Thomas.
Hi, Dr. Wayland.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Awesome. I'm doing great. Thanks. I appreciate you being here. I think the audience is truly excited about really rebuilding businesses during this time, because here we are, we're recording, April of 2020, and as a nation, we are just facing very interesting times, I guess would be the word. And my last guest, Dr. Diane Whiter, she really spoke about the heroes of leadership, leaders who are stepping up and really even deeper into their leadership roles. And then we have other leaders who are really faltering because they weren't ready for what our nation is experiencing, and they're struggling. So, I'm excited because you're my colleague, and, you work with leaders, especially, when we think about those senior leadership roles, we know that having a compelling vision, right, and creating an environment to include a culture of contributors to carry out that vision is so imperative. And you and I have had offline conversations quite a bit around this passion of yours, a shared approach to visioning an organization. So I would love for you just to jump right in and tell the audience a little bit about this, and just give us the backstory here.
Sure. Thanks for having me here, and it's just great to be here to share with everyone. So you said something that was pivotal, very critical to the process, which is it's a shared process. Um, and I think part of my backstory, like my story started with not understanding the value of the shared process. And so I just want to go back to one thing that you mentioned earlier in your intro. There are leaders that are faltering, and there are leaders that are being more successful. And
Yes.
so a lot of the success stories that I'm hearing, I'm listening for how much are they involving their people in the process? How much are they drawing out that knowledge from their people? Because every organization has a collective intelligence or a collective wisdom, but that
Yes.
wisdom and that that ability to learn, it really does come from it stems from having a vision and a shared vision and folks being aligned with that vision. So just a little bit about my backstory. I started unknowingly in this area in I would say it dates back to like 18 years ago when I was pursuing my bachelor's at Columbia. and we studied. I was an architecture major, never became an architect, but in its traditional sense, but the skills are being used a little bit here. And so we did a project, and I chose a topic called anamorphosis at the leaders as at the recommendation of my professor. And all that is seeing one image from different vantage points. And
Ah,
so I completed this project, and I didn't plan to do anything with it after that, but I think it just opened my eyes to the concept of vision. And so we're talking about like biological vision, natural vision, but in a sense, vision works similarly um, in organizations and for people as individuals. And so that's you know, right after that, I was able to create a position. Uh, I went home, I volunteered at my church, and my pastor at the time told me, "Well, create a position and let me know what it is." And I'm
so
fresh out of
cool.
college. The funny part is that I'd done research on the positions before that, and so I created a position called Vision Development Coordinator. And it was basically just coordinating the vision. And this is where I got uh, the I made my most mistakes. I learned the most here about why it takes a shared approach to visioning. And so, that was the first phase of what I guess I would consider my backstory.
Yeah, and that's so cool because so many times we fall into what our calling is by, unknowingly, you use that word unknowingly, right? And
Yes,
making those mistakes and really understanding processes and how uh, and I'm just, I mean, I know you are of faith, so I'm just going to say, where God is calling us, right? And so it's
absolutely.
interesting where you started, and then kind of how it's one of these, right? It's one of these, come on, Thomas, you're coming in the right direction, and so I love that, and I know that there's a building period to our calling. There's also building period to research and theory, and how as researchers we are always building upon others works, and that's to enhance the future, right? Because we're and you do have futuristic in that top five, so I
Yes.
imagine that just naturally this is what you do. And so how has this vision based approach evolved maybe over the last decade or so as a whole, as a way of organizations taking a look at this approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to kind of shorten this, you asked about the last decade, so I'm going to try to compact it a little bit. But visionary leadership um, is the term that most people are familiar with. But the difference between visionary and vision-based leadership, and I think this is over the last 10 years where it has really shifted, especially when you consider the complexity of the problems that we're all facing,
Mm.
in the nation, as businesses, in the world. it no one person can have all the answers. And so in the visionary leadership approach, you have a person, a visionary man or woman or man, at the front. They get the vision and they communicate it to people, and then the people are supposed to buy in and implement
Mm.
it. In the last 10 years, that model has been, or I say has been, because in the research it's showing that the shared approach works, but it's still being upended even now, like in the COVID situation. Um, you're seeing more and more leaders, and you're hearing stories about leaders involving their people in the process, because
Mm.
this has caught a lot of businesses, and it's caught a lot of businesses by surprise. I think in the sense that of the gravity of the situation. I
Yes.
I was on a conference yesterday with um, it was a quarantine conference that media company put on. They just moved everything online, and so you're in this conference, you're hearing presentations, and I heard from Dan Price. He's been in the news lately for he's the CEO of Gravity Payments, and he stated that his business had just lost 55% of their revenue because
Wow.
they're directly tied to small businesses. And so he said that they were prepared for 20% because they had weathered that storm back in '08, '09. But he said 55% they had to take a totally different approach. And so that approach really included pulling their people together and, explaining the situation. And together they figured out, you know, steps moving forward that everyone was able to commit to. And so I think that's where the literature has gone. That's where the research has gone. But I think more and more we're going to start hearing these stories because the situations are just too complex for one person to solve.
Yeah. And, you know, again, we're not created to walk this journey alone, regardless. And so I love hearing stories about how people are coming together, how people are, having that shared vision, shared knowledge, shared learning, shared growing. All this time is such an interesting, like I said in the beginning, it's an interesting time because there is an opportunity for people to really stretch themselves, because the status quo in businesses isn't always the greatest. It's not always going to be right for the people of the organization, even leadership of the organization, right? And too many times leaders are thinking that they are, although yes, they do have the vision, why not kind of encapsulate that vision and be asking people to come into that leadership fold, have a seat at that table, and let's talk about what this vision is, and then how we can be, pushing it down and throughout, not just up and down, but sideways as well. Because that vision, and you can tell me if I'm kind of on the right track here too. In my thinking, it's like that vision has to be externally focused too. We need to think about the individuals within the organization, but then our external partners, our vendors, and do they know what our vision is as a leader of an organization, and maybe how does their fit, step into where we're heading.
Absolutely. And you said a lot of good things there. Um, the first one I want to address is what you stated a few minutes ago. And it really resonated with me and it gave me a thought. But it really is a collective process. It really is a collective process. And that external part is key. But this is what I was going to share, what you prompted me. A lot of times visionaries come out of the war room or
Mm.
senior management teams come out of the war room with this plan, with this they with a plan to move forward. They're excited or they feel empowered, and I think a lot of the time um, it it does take a step back to realize, wait, as a visionary or as a leader, I went through a process. This just didn't fall in my lap. This just didn't happen. I went through a process to understand this. Um, and my people also need to go through the process. And so what I've seen is it's very successful when leaders replicate that process
Mm.
for their people. And so just taking them through, I call it the vision journey. Just that
Ooh, I
process
want to
of
hear
just
about that.
seeing. Oh,
Let's hear
well,
about that vision journey.
the vision journey. Well, it's a it's a coaching program that I've done before. My wife and I came up with it, and it's just a matter of walking, like a visionary taking a walk through their vision. And we've worked with startups more, but I'm sure it would work the same way or a similar way in other organizations. But just walking through the vision that they have to start something, and so just fleshing out what's on the horizon,
Mm.
and we always start there, and then we come back to, well, where am I now, and then what successes do I have, or what challenges do I have, or what's my passion, what makes me pound the table, because a lot of times people start businesses over something that they're not quite settled with at work, and that's why there was a statistic that I think it's a third of the people surveyed actually were at work when they decided to start a business. And so, it's just taking that journey through the vision, but then once the visionary gets it, or once the leader understands it, they have to take a second loop with their people. And it's not necessarily to sell their people on the vision that they have. Of course, senior leaders have specialized knowledge, and they are, kind of taking, or not kind of, and really, they really do take that external knowledge that they have of their suppliers and vendors and customers and what's going on inside the organization. And they're at the cusp of that, and they understand how it works. Um, and also, when they take that second loop with their people have been talking on ground level to certain people, to certain stakeholders, and that all that does is add to that collective knowledge
Mm,
of the company.
yeah, that's good. And I believe that there is research, around people, having those ideas around, starting a business, and why are people leaving organizations, right? Because they're not either being fed where they're at. They're not, they see things in a different way. They want to do things in a different way. They feel that they can do things better, and and I guess that's all to say, kind of twofold now that I'm saying that. It's like we want to keep good people in our organizations. We don't want people walking out the door. So, in my mind, I'm always thinking, how can we keep good people within our organizations and be able to have that vision journey together, having that collectiveness, moving forward together, instead of saying, I'm going to leave because, I mean, a lot of times that's great because that's how, some of these amazing companies, just begin because somebody was at a company, they learned, and then they moved on because they have different thinking or processes that they want to put in place. And I think that's awesome. So I guess it's twofold. It's like, yes, we want to keep people, good, solid people who are gravitating towards the leader's vision. But then as leaders, we also need to see that sometimes our people do need to step out the door and move on their own into whatever they are being called to do. So it's kind of a dance between understanding, our good people in the organization, and then allowing people to go out on their own and start their own vision process and whatnot. So I think that's awesome that you and your wife came up with this program on visioning and really being able to take people through that.
Yeah, and I want to add, there are companies that do that manage that successfully. They do the either corporate venturing or the entrepreneurship where people are given the freedom. Well, number one, it starts with the leaders realizing, if I don't empower them in this way, they're going to walk out the door, and
That's right.
then valuing that knowledge that's walking out of the door. That's valuable knowledge.
It is.
Leaders give people chances, and they develop their leaders, and to have all of that knowledge to walk out of the door is more costly in a lot of cases than to do something, together. And I think when, there, like you said, there's cases where, yes, that needs to happen. People need to branch out on their own. But I think um, there's a, there's somewhere that the companies that get it right meet in the middle, and that's
Hmm.
preserving that relationship. And I think
Sure
relationships
is.
are so key, especially when it's times like this really drive that point home. We're concerned with our families. Yes, we have to work. Yes, we have to make a livelihood. But at the end of the day, we're concerned with relationships, not only with our families but with
Yes.
others. And so, just that in that same spirit, that whole relational approach to visioning, and visioning is really unique because it touches a lot of areas. And I may be jumping subjects here, but feel free to
It's
reel me back
okay.
in.
It's a
But the
conversation.
okay, the way a lot of folks have treated vision, especially in the early literature, it was a one-off event, and some companies still do that vision development as, we're going to create this statement and we're going to move forward, and it's necessary. It's a strategic event. But the way we treat vision, my wife and I at our company that we started, we treat vision as going along the whole life cycle of a company.
Mhm.
And
Has
so
to
that
be.
could be in some cases more than 100 years. There was a situation with the March of Dimes. They've changed their vision several times because they achieved it, or society had achieved it, and that brings in that external piece again. They were created to fight polio. The vaccine for polio was found, and then they were battling birth defects, and in what was it, 2001, the human genome was mapped, and then they said, okay, we need to get even bigger about this because we're running out of, horizons, if you will. And so they projected again, stronger, healthier babies. That was, 2001. And if you go on their website today, their motto, their big idea, their vision is stronger moms, healthier babies. And so
So
you
it's
kind of see that
evolved.
stakeholder approach. Yeah, it has evolved.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely evolved. And I think a big takeaway there, in listening to you is for leaders to understand that you can cast a supervision, right? This amazing vision for people to grasp hold of. But when things change, that vision can change and it's okay. That doesn't mean that every week you're going to come up with a new vision, but visions do need to be tweaked based on what a leader and what an organization is going through at the time. And the COVID-19 is an absolute amazing example of having to pivot, having to shift mindsets, having to shift priorities, and a vision, a long-term vision. Part of their long-term vision may be very well the same, but then implementing, different scenarios like we're having now, and then even allowing in that shared approach uh, our divisions having their own visions, right? Departments, do they have their own visions? And really making that a collection of visions that all stem from senior leaders' vision, but then being able to allow your people to have that space to create visions for their people as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Well, I'd love to hear maybe some, practical tips for our leaders who are listening to the call when they're, thinking about visioning and would like to promote a vision-based approach for their organizations. What might be some things that leaders can take away from this conversation today, and maybe added some additional tips that you have?
Sure. Well, the first thing stems back to vision being inspirational and aspirational. I
Mm.
think in tough times, vision can serve as what Angela Passarelli described as was it a positive emotional attractor versus the negative emotional attractor. So vision can really motivate people to see beyond the problem in order to address the problem. And I think, in the example that I cited earlier with gravity payments, I think that's really what happened, um, or what happened in that situation. So that would be one, using vision as, a way to inspire people, not only with the company's vision, but leaders knowing the personal vision of the people, their personal vision as individuals. So that would be one.
Oh, I love
Um,
that. Yes, making sure leaders you understand your people.
yeah.
Loud and clear here.
And we talk about senior leaders having visions for the organization, but and I think this kind of moves into the second tip. I think organizations over the life cycle, especially when considering startups, it moves to a point where the leader's vision for the company may evolve, um, but leaders also have a vision for their lives, and sometimes those get intertwined. And so it would be great, and this is advice that I would have for leaders, to figure out how your vision for yourself personally is different from the vision for the business.
Mhm. Yeah, because you're right. Although they do intertwine, there are some differences there. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I guess when I think about that too, I think about although those personal and professional visions can change the value or the values of the leader, uh, probably don't, as far as what a leader values personally as well as professionally. It's kind of my thinking around that as you were talking.
Yeah, and that's so true. And this is what I love about vision. You can kind of combine it with other constructs, if you will, or factors in an organization. And so, vision and values they do and should work hand in hand there. Because if you have a vision to do something, and it's aggressive, it's worldwide. Those values are telling you exactly how you'll do it, what you won't do, versus what
That's
you will
right.
do, how you'll do one thing versus another. And it really helps to see things in the long term, but also make those short term decisions by considering both vision and values.
Yes. Well, that's great information, Thomas. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add that maybe we didn't touch on?
Yes, just I guess one final thing would be I would really encourage leaders to, especially right now, to talk to their people and to listen. And this is, it kind of goes back to my bias as the coach. We're trained in active listening, so I would really encourage them to listen to their people. And the reason why stems from a conversation that I was so fortunate to have with Jim Kujas. He told me that, and I'm trying to get this correct, the the vision of the people is latent in their heart.
Mm,
And so it's only by listening, only by a leader listening to their people, that they can hear the vision coming from their people. Talk to one person, talk to another, and then put it all together to come up with something that resonates with them. And
mm.
so I would really if there's any takeaway that I would really encourage, it would be for leaders to just take the time. It could be a minute, it could be 2 minutes, but to talk to their people and to listen to what they have to say.
Yeah, so important. you know, get out of your seats, regardless of where your people land on a hierarchy chart, if they're on a hierarchy chart, what they have to say matters. Every voice in an organization matters. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to implement everything that your people are asking for or their ideas, but just having that ability and willingness to listen to them. I think that speaks volumes to a leader. So I thank you for reminding our leaders on the call, to do that. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Well, Thomas, it has just been a pleasure to have you on the show and really hear about the importance of the shared vision-based approach. And I'd love people, if they would like to connect with you, how can they connect with you? And I'll put it in the show notes, but if you can just let them know um, how they can connect with you.
Sure. So the best way to connect with me is via LinkedIn. I'm on there, Thomas E. Anderson II. Also, my web address is www.teano.com, and I'll spell that TEAIIANO.com. Just shoot me an email, and I'll be glad to respond.
All right. So you heard it there, both the website as well as LinkedIn. You can connect with Thomas Anderson II. He would love to have additional conversations with you. And if there's any way that he can help you in the future with your visioning and your organization, I know that he would be more than willing to speak with you about that. All right, Thomas. Well, thank you again. And you stay safe, you and your family, and keep doing great things.
Thank you, Dr. Willen. It was a pleasure to be on your show, and thank you for those well wishes, and I wish the same for you and your family.
Thank you. Absolutely. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Until next time, this is Dr. Kelly Waymo. Keep doing great things because our world needs leaders like